Hello, my name is Fern G. Z. Carr. My website is www.ferngzcarr.com. I'd like to welcome you to a series of themed poetry readings based on poems I've written. This is part 1, Animals. I feel fortunate to be able to share our planet with so many fascinating species of animals. Whether domesticated or wild, they're such a source of wonder and often comfort. Their lot in life, though, isn't always easy. That's why I've chosen to dedicate part 1 of my reading series to animals. By so doing, it's my goal to draw attention to a few of the perils they face. Some simply due to nature, and others human-related. I hope that these poems I've written might perhaps prove to increase awareness of their plight. My first poem is entitled, Oh Dear. The premise of the poem is to highlight the conflict between urban development and deer habitats. Unfortunately, though, coexistence can't always be harmonious due to competing needs. As far as the structure of the poem is concerned, I used a repeating refrain, so it repeats in the sense of sound, but if you check the spelling, you'll see that I spelled deer differently in the refrain depending on where that particular refrain is slotted into the poem. The spelling changes gradually as the situation worsens with each progressive stanza. The first refrain is spelled O-D-E-A-R, O-D-E-A-R. The second still uses the same traditional spelling as in the first. Then, the third refrain becomes a hybrid. The first "oh dear" is spelled D-E-A-R, but the second "oh dear" is spelled D-E-E-R. The fourth refrain is identical to the third, and finally at the conclusion of the poem, it's almost as though I'm addressing the animal. I spelled oh dear as D-E-E-R and D-E-E-R. I'd like to read this poem for you now. Oh dear. September breezes nudge arthritic arms of gnarled trees against their will. Oh dear, oh dear. When branches capriciously caper away, prancing to their own primal rhythms, retreating from their arboreal camouflage. Oh dear, oh dear. Atop the head of a swaggering white-tailed buck in his once familiar territory on an anonymous mountain. Oh dear, where urban encroachment now bullies forest ecosystems into involuntary juxtaposition. Oh dear, with monsters who mow his grass, sculpt his shrubs, and shine their headlights into his startled eyes, while he remains transfixed. Oh dear, oh dear. My next poem is entitled Duckling. It's based on a situation I observed when walking with my husband by a condo complex that bordered a wetland area. We saw a crowd of people who were observing fuzzy little ducklings swimming behind the mama duck. It was so cute. Everyone had smiles on their faces, and they were caught up in the moment. Of course, that moment took a very, very dark turn. It was completely transformative. Everyone was left speechless. In terms of formatting, you may notice that I staggered the lines to mimic a back and forth movement. I felt that would tie in with the rushes swaying in the breeze and the rippling of the water as the ducks swam along. Also, the positioning of the lines is fairly fluid, no pun intended. I didn't want them to be left justified in stanza form. Instead, I thought they should have a bit of an edge to them, especially as the poem draws to its tense conclusion. Duckling. Condos tower over a wetland sanctuary where painted turtles sun themselves on flat rocks. Dragonfly helicopters dart among the reeds, red-winged blackbirds alight, swaying in the breeze. Damselflies skim the water for mosquito larvae and daphnia. Canada geese waddle imperiously along paths next to the water, glaring at passers-by. Mallard drakes submerge their emerald green heads, searching for minnows and algae, their feathered bottoms bobbing upright above the water. A female mallard glides along the surface, leaving a triangular wake of ripples that jostles her already imprinted brood of downy ducklings swimming to the shore, where she starts to peck at the runt, grabbing it by its nape with her bill and forcing its fuzzy head under water again and again, despite the squawking of another female, balancing diagonally on webbed feet, flapping her wings in desperate protest against this infanticide. An act so surreal that before it can even register in the minds of bystanders as more than spunky maternal discipline, the duckling floats, limp, on the water. As I mentioned in my introduction, some occurrences are simply just due to nature. There's nothing we can do about them. That was the case in Duckling. Lion on the Street, however, addresses a situation that is definitely preventable. It deals with human negligence and the exploitation of animals. Had it not been for that, lives could have been spared. You'll see by my epigraph that this is a true story. When I heard about it on the news, it was so distressing. It prompted me to write this poem that ends with a bleak play on words. Lion on the Street, dedicated to the animals that perished in Zanesville, Ohio. Magnificent beast, regal, ragged mane, tawny physique, muscles rippling, tail switching, fierce jaws open wide, bearing golden yellow spikes. Menacing. Menaced. Released from your ramshackle, chain-link faux zoo, a homegrown excuse for an exotic animal preserve. An accidental abdication. Your massive paws, unable to cloak the click-clack of claws on concrete. Your amber eyes, not wild for the gazelles and wildebeest of the Serengeti, but wild at the sight of speeding metal and rubber, wild at the sight of your own blood and guts. Stripped of your majesty, stripped of your life. Royalty relinquished, just a lion on the street. It goes without saying that I care very deeply about animals and their welfare. In fact, I served as president of the local branch of the BCSPCA. That's the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, an absolutely wonderful organization. I was constantly at the shelter where I saw so many lovely sentient creatures who just wanted to have a good home and a safe place to sleep. I was tempted to adopt them all, but of course I couldn't do that. I did take one very special sweet cat home with me, though. I'd like to think that this poem reflects the essence of what it is to be feline. Here is Escape. Escape. Piped-in elevator music, barely audible, wafts through a darkened room full of cages where luminous green orbs reflect the scant light. Even the dogs have refrained from yelping. They whimper in their sleep while their feet twitch as they chase imaginary rabbits. Motionless, but for her tail swishing back and forth. She continues to stare with a look calculated to project laser beams that zap and vaporize metal bars. Their dematerialization, liberation, recapturing the essence of all that is feline as she slinks into the obscurity of the night. Acknowledgements and credits. All poems contained herein, copyright Fern G. Z. Carr. Duckling, Lion on the Street, and Escape are from my poetry book, Shards of Crystal. Oh Dear was first published in Voices from the Valleys. Duckling was first published in Poeming Pigeons, and Lion on the Street was first published in Miracle. Baby raccoon photo, courtesy of Gary Bendig on Unsplash. Deer in yard, buck, forest and mountains, and wetlands photos, all copyright Fern G. Z. Carr. Duckling photo, courtesy of Marco Hankla on Unsplash. Lion photo, courtesy of Nashad Abdu on Unsplash. Lion and lioness photo, courtesy of Bibake Upal on Unsplash. Kitten in shelter cage photo, courtesy of Thomas Park on Unsplash. And kitten climbing tree photo, courtesy of Cohen Eikelenboom on Unsplash. I would also like to thank Canadian Heritage, the Canada Council for the Arts, and the League of Canadian Poets for their support. Je voudrais remercier Patrimoine canadien, le Conseil des arts du Canada et la Ligue des poètes canadiens de leur soutien.